All right. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our Friday Government Affairs Update. I am Scott Pierce, the Executive Director of the Premium Cigar Association, and I'm here with the head of our Government Affairs, Joshua Habersky, and our favorite consultant slash professor slash Colonel Sanders impersonator, Patrick Anderson. Gentlemen, how are you guys doing this afternoon?
We're doing great, Scott.
Doing well. I feel as though we got Glenn's attire on today, even though Glenn's not on the show.
I'm channeling Glenn right now.
All right. Well, we need some of your witticisms and your also Glenn loves the show and tell aspect, right? He loves the visual aids. So I hope you brought plenty of visual aids in order to help. Because today, as people may or may not know, we put out a lot of information this week all about tax increases. And that's the favorite go-to weapon of choice for our opposition who lacks imagination. Let's go ahead and try to tax tobacco use into oblivion. And so once again, trying to use a tried and true method that the government usually does here when trying to pass through regulation is to throw everything they possibly can into a big bill that has to go through, and they're going to try to sneak stuff in. And so that's what they've kind of done here, is that they have tried to put in these tobacco taxes in, and there are a myriad of ways which we have explicated in multiple ways throughout the past couple of weeks here about why this is A, going back on promises, B, a very, very bad idea, and C, really ultimately with the way that government regulations usually go, going to backfire in a big way, not even accomplish what they set out to accomplish, and in fact actually make things worse for themselves in the long run. So on that note, as we kind of drill down into some of the wonkiness of this, I'm going to turn it over to the gentleman who has a bow tie on, who is on brand for being wonky. Patrick Anderson, let's deep dive into what these tax measures actually mean, what that impact could actually have. And then Josh, Patrick, let's talk about some of the resources we put out and how we can engage not only all of our retailers, who hopefully everybody's listening to this now. I would love to see thousands actually joining here for this, but hopefully it gets spread out, but also ways in which retailers can enlist the consumers. We want to absolutely assault, not physically, of course, but with letters and with our voices. We want to make it known that this is not a good idea and that there's a large community out there that's opposed to this. So Patrick, please, if you can kind of go through and explicate what this means for our retailers and our members.
Absolutely. And let me start by saying, what you just said, Scott, is the most important thing. If everybody who is watching today hasn't, go ahead and make sure that you click on Cigar Action and contact your representatives. If you've already done that, make sure that you grab your cigar smoking friends and have them do it. Make sure that you put something out at your shop so that your customers can do it. This is an all hands on deck exercise because we are looking at the largest single increase in tobacco taxes in decades. And this is something that is designed, and this is according to the people who wrote it, it's designed not to make money for the government. It is designed to force the cigar enthusiasts to have a hobby which is too expensive to pursue and that will just give up. That's the goal here. And it's important that everybody communicate with their elected officials on that.
Little caveat to that, I would also like to know, tell all of your loved ones who know how cantankerous and ornery we all are when we don't get to smoke our cigars, that they really ought to be sending letters too, because if we can't have our cigars, they're going to bear the brunt of it.
Yeah, I think that's important to note, Scott. Some other ways, if you already took action as a cigar, enthusiast, as somebody that owns a shop, I think that, we put together one resource in particular this week, how as a retailer you can get consumers involved, 5 steps for that. And that's really important. Some of it involves working with your state association, sharing the information. We also did some basic math. As a lot of folks are aware, Ryan Parada joined our team, PCA Government Affairs, and has been really good on research and economics and adding some different data elements to our arguments. And looking at it, we took a generic cigar and weighed it. We had the scales out, felt like the science fair all over again, and determined that in that cigar in particular, the new tax per stick would be about $2.75 more. And per box, you're looking at about $50 or $60 increase there. And that's just one standard generic size cigar. So I think that message really needs to resonate to the folks that are in the lounges, the regulars that are sitting there, that this is something that really would affect the pocketbook of your average cigar enthusiast. If you smoke any type of cigar, that will be felt. But it will be even worse if you are smoking the larger, heavier cigars that are, more reasonably priced. That has the largest effect of this tax increase in particular. So
that's right, Josh. The tax really does shift from what currently is a per cigar tax. So which kind of makes sense. We enjoy cigars one at a time, generally as a product, and that's how they're currently taxed. And this is going to shift it over to a weight-based measure. And so you are going to have some cigars, even among the same size, but the density of the cigar is going to matter. The humidity of the cigar is going to change, the amount of the tax. And it's going to, really lead to a very complex process on the back end. But for consumers, this is a much more expensive hobby if this tax goes into effect.
And I'll also want to mention that goes and applies to pipe tobacco as well. The percentage increase there is over 1,600%. There's variability. We've weighed over 100 cigars this week to come up with some different data. We worked with the data that the National Association of Tobacco Outlets provided as well, and overlaid that for premium only. And in the analysis, the outliers, there was one cigar in particular that was an 1,800% increase. So, this is detrimentally effective to both premium cigars and pipe tobacco. You're looking at the average about 500 to 600% price increase. But as you mentioned, it's changing how the taxes are actually applied. So you could have the same cigar, the same brand within the same box, and the weight of those could vary a little bit, and the price difference for the tax would be different. So it's a convoluted mess. It's something that we need to get many more consumers involved. We've had 10,000 already. Which is really strong for our grassroots numbers. We traditionally, have a couple thousand, but this has been our largest campaign to date this year. And I think it's been a necessary call to arms. People are starting to understand that this would shift the market, not only prices, but if you're having products that are, smaller, more expensive, get less affected by the taxes, you're going to have people gravitate their products to that. So it affects everyone across the board: consumers, retailers, and manufacturers.
Yeah, and let me say this on the pipe issue, because we have some PCA member stores that are very highly focused on that pipe tobacco market. You're talking about a $49.90 tax per pound of tobacco, right? So that's for your bulk purchases. That's going to affect consumers in that way. A lot of folks like to do the smaller pouches, 2-ounce pouches. That's going to add about $6 to the cost of that 2-ounce sample size that a lot of customers enjoy going in and trying the new blends with that sample size. That's a huge price increase for those consumers. And, on the economic research, it shows that about upwards 10% and upwards is the amount of demand loss resulting from this level of the tax. And, as I said at the start, that is the ultimate goal of this legislation, is to price the hobby so that enthusiasts will give it up.
And here's an interesting thing that's come up in terms of this. Sorry, Josh, was that, in this instance, for those that are singularly focused, they don't like it, whatever. Congrats to them. So they come after it. And so not even realizing, and maybe they do in a large sense, but how much tax revenue is going to be wiped out if you do this and this industry goes away. Even if you go over that 10% less, you're going to start realizing a whole lot less tax revenue that's coming in on this. So where are you going to make up that money? You're either going to have to tax something else more, or you're going to have to cut programs. So what I find really interesting, and this is a message I think that we also need to start getting out there, is that this is going to necessitate cutting programs that are out there and vital programs that are out there. And that the justification of which is going to be, oh, I just don't like my neighbor smoking cigars, so your kid now has to go without a free school lunch because I had to kill a cigar smoker over here with taxes. I mean, that's effectively what we're looking at here, is that they're willing to go ahead and try to take on this industry because they don't like tobacco. And it's going to, in effect, either make taxes go up somewhere else or effectively kill other programs because there's no other way to pay for them.
Yeah. And it really was crafted by prohibitionist, anti-tobacco legislators. It wasn't a revenue raising mechanism. That wasn't why this policy was initially crafted. PCA has been on this since late February in terms of active advocacy. We first started talking about this in September of 2019. Patrick and I, when it was introduced by Senator Durbin previously. So this has been on our radar. We know they've introduced the bill twice before. In a maternal health bill and as the standalone Tobacco Tax Equity Act. So, we've been messaging this for quite some time. I'm going to actually share my screen right now if I can. And I want to show folks, let's see here. I don't know if folks can see my screen. But if you go to cigaraction.org, there are two areas that you're going to want to look at. The first of which is the Federal Action Center, which is right at the top button, oppose the premium cigar tax. This is the action alert that Patrick and I were talking about. If you enter your information here, this will send a letter to your two senators and your House member automatically. It's based off of your address. So that's a pre-written message that takes 30 seconds to do. It is not that difficult. And then on the other page of Cigar Action, if you go back to the main page, at the bottom, there's a policy resources tab. And in that, at the bottom of that, you'll see nothing fair about the Tobacco Tax Equity Act. Read more. That is our core talking points. We've since updated them and added to that. But this gives you the gist of the arguments. If you're looking to educate your customers about what's going on in regards to this tax, you'll click on that nothing fair about the Tobacco Tax Equity Act. And that has a download that will show you all of the different core arguments. On our main website, premiumcigars.org, you'll see some of the releases that we put out this week, including some of that economic data that we referenced, 5 ways for retailers to get involved with consumers to oppose the tax. And then Patrick and I have been sending a series of letters to elected officials, the House and Senate, in our arguments about premium cigars and why they definitely should not be included and why the Tobacco Tax Equity Act shouldn't be included in the reconciliation process. But also yesterday we released a letter to the president and voiced our concerns about that. Again, drawing in all of the different arguments that are in those white papers and policy memos, but talking about how it won't raise revenue. And I think this is important. You're talking about a massive package that it needs to be funded in order to get some of the moderates on board. And right now, they're projecting that tobacco taxes will raise $6 billion in the first year, but by the end of it, in 10 years, they say that they're going to raise $10 billion a year. Now, that's factually inaccurate. You have a contracting market. The FDA has announced their intention of banning certain products, have banned products in the past 2 weeks. So you have a consolidating market and taxable products are shrinking. Now, those aren't premium cigars at this moment, but there are different research efforts and other regulatory actions that we could face and that we're fighting back. We previously were victorious in the court, so we didn't have to deal with some of those recently, but you do have an overall contracting market and you'll never be able to get those revenues. If you add a tax onto a product that's significant, demand will go down. So it's important if you call your elected officials or send a letter, you also note that the numbers aren't accurate.
I think it's also important to note that it's not even just necessarily the numbers are going to go down. The numbers of consumption, legal consumption will go down. But if prohibition of alcohol, marijuana, the opioid epidemic, if it's taught us anything, it's that if people want to get access, the black and gray markets will thrive when they do this. So they're not going to cut consumption. They're not going to do – none of that's going to happen. And what they're going to do is they're going to turn into black and gray markets to where they're going – so they're not going to solve any problem. They're just going to make matters worse. They're going to cut their revenues. Like I said, they're going to cut programs, raise taxes somewhere else, and they're not going to impact usage rates. They're not going to impact anything. And the other part of it is that we know from the health data, they're not even going to impact population health because the average cigar smoker has absolutely no deleterious health effects when juxtaposed to a non-smoker. We know that from the government's own research. So there really is nothing. They are literally Don Quixote, although they're just imagining windmills out there. They're not even riding at real windmills at this point.
Patrick, I know that you and I have been working on the argument side. Is there any other arguments that you want to highlight for folks as they craft and explain this to their members of Congress as well as their customers?
Sure, Josh. Look, there's also this myth out there that the only people who smoke cigars are, fat cats on Wall Street. And while certainly there are a number of wealthy folks out there who enjoy premium cigars, there's a number of regular everyday folks, middle class, working class, who also enjoy a nice cigar at the end of the week as a way to cap it off, kick off their weekend, enjoy their tailgate, celebrate a graduation or a birthday. This is a product that is used by folks as a hobby, not an addiction. And that's another thing that the research is very clear about. So we are out here as regular everyday people. We are below the $400,000 threshold that the president said would be bearing the brunt of any tax increases in order to pay for this new agenda. And so, the estimate is that 98% of all tobacco users, including premium cigar smokers, are under that $400,000 a year threshold. And so it's important to let folks know that you are a regular everyday American, middle class, you enjoy smoking a cigar occasionally, and that this is a direct assault on your hobby and something that you are very passionate about and that you're willing to vote on this issue.
And just for everyone's reference, if you did not see it on the screen, I did in the comment section put the two links of the most relevant pieces of information, the grassroots alert that we've consistently been messaging for the past 2 weeks, and that updated list for retailers to get consumers involved. That's critically important as we move through it. So, Patrick, can you explain to viewers where things stand in Congress right now with the reconciliation process? I know that we did an emergency kind of press conference last week, and not a whole lot has changed since then, but there are a few moving parts. The process has evolved a little bit since the last update that we gave on live here, and so what we're seeing now is you may start to see in the press that a deal has been reached between the House and the Senate. There's a big asterisk next to that deal that has been reached. Essentially, what's happened is the House took their bill and all of the new taxes they were going to levy to pay for it. And then the senators came in and said, well, add a few more to the list that we're interested in before you pass it in the House.
That's the deal that's been reached. It's really just that they've combined that menu of potential things that can be used to pay for this $3.5 trillion package. Now, underlying that, the main foundational problem that the reconciliation package still faces is that moderate Democrats are not comfortable with passing a $3.5 trillion spending bill, particularly one that is going to raise a tremendous amount of taxes. And a lot of those taxes are going to fall on the middle class and lower. And we're going into an election year is going to kickstart in just a couple of months. So the problems, the original problems that folks who are trying to pass this tax faced is still out there. And there is still a lot of opportunity for us to make headway in getting members to say, hey, look, as the price tag on this programs start to drop, we're going to start seeing the taxes that are needed to pay for it drop as well. And this is one that needs to be at the top of the ticket because it predominantly impacts middle-class Americans. There is no question about that.
So you have, several negotiations going on at once, leadership with the White House, key moderates, and then also, the process, the bill that we're most concerned, or the language that we're most concerned about, passed the House Ways and Means Committee, currently is with the House Budget Committee, and will later go to rules along with 12 other different packages as they're combined together in the House Budget Committee. So, that is an area where you do have a lot of emphasis and influence with leadership roles and those moderates, but you do have the track and the process moving along kind of on a dual track. And one of the other things that I want to highlight, in addition to the tax discussions, and feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions or would like additional resources, we're going to continue to really unload everyone's inbox with information, since this is, a really, really important and impactful, development within our industry. So we are on high alert in government affairs about this, and we'll be churning out a lot of stuff to explain the complexities of things and afford people the opportunity to communicate the pain points to elected officials that these provisions would cause. So that will be an ongoing development, but also concurrently, we are starting to already see pre-filed legislation at the state level. So Glenn and company, along with our team, is already starting to sift through things that will be coming up in 2022 on the state legislative calendars. So we've had already a few bills in Florida that have been pre-filed that are of interest, Wisconsin and a few other states. You have some state legislatures that haven't adjourned. I know that Glenn has talked a lot about some of the developments in New York State. They have not adjourned already, but you already have sessions preparing during this pre-file session for 2022. And one of the commitments that both Scott and I have had for PCA Government Affairs is that we want to be very transparent and explain the process of where things are going. That's why you're getting a level of detail. We're really pulling back the curtain of how some of the inner workings of government affairs operate. And I think it's important to let folks know that, yes, we're sitting here September 24th, and we're already starting to work on things for 2022. It's like, the elves during Christmas, right after December 21st, you start preparing for the next year. And that's what happens in government affairs at the state level. There really is no stoppage anymore.
Did you just refer to yourself as an elf?
I did. More so Glenn. That was a joke. Since Glenn's not on today, we get to make poke fun.
Yeah, he gets to bear the brunt of it. No, that's a very good point, and that's one of the main reasons why, again, activity in the state association is critical, and making sure that we have the bidirectional communication with PCA headquarters and what's going on at that state level consistently. It's no longer a time frame where, a few months at the start of the year, the state legislature is in session, and that's what we're focused on. And then the rest of the year, it's no longer like that, especially with the pandemic and the virtual meetings and everything else they got going on. States are starting, and it's already starting with the pre-filings, as Josh talked about. So again, understanding that we as an industry now need to be ever vigilant in our own advocacy and defense. This is not a one and done thing. It's a consistent thing now that needs to be part of our business as usual. Please make sure, reach out to us. Any questions, any concerns that are going on there. We work proactively as much as we possibly can with the state associations to seek out and destroy anything that would harm your businesses, or at the same time see if there's other areas where we might be able to make inroads and progress on positive legislation that can help you.
And I have to give a lot of credit to the state associations in this tax fight. We've had a dozen state associations come together and reach out to their congressional delegations or specific senators that we've identified. That is how, the National Association can work cooperatively with the state association. They are taking the lead. We're providing information and background, but whatever they're comfortable with and everything that I've seen in what they have drafted has been consistent with the PCA message. I'm really proud of our team kicking it into high gear over the last 2 weeks. Patrick, Glenn, Ryan, Scott, Greg, John, our entire board of directors, and coming together and working within our volunteer framework too, that includes those state associations and getting those information. Patrick and I are getting a lot of requests from other associations, other groups, corporate interests. Hey, we see what PCA is doing. Can we collaborate? Can we work on this with you? And that's exactly where we want to be as an association, leading the charge, providing the information, providing vehicles for you to take action. We're not sending out informational only releases. We are sending actionable items where you can have an impact.
So speaking of doing things at a different level, Josh, why don't you talk about the International Policy Summit that we got coming up in a couple of weeks?
Absolutely. Very exciting. This is something that we really wanted to do in person, but unfortunately with the pandemic, we decided, because of international travel, to do this first one as an international forum virtually during a half day during October 6th, right before our fundraiser and reception. So we are going to have a live event component for folks that are near the DC area or traveling and they want to make it and come and support the association during our fundraiser and help support our advocacy initiatives. But the International Policy Summit, we have confirmations from the ambassador to Honduras, which we're really excited. I think I've announced that first here. Glenn has been working with the embassy and other embassies on speakers. We're doing panels on trade and commerce, charity and philanthropy, manufacturing and operations, and then several other keynote speakers. Patrick is also working to get 2 high-profile senators confirmed to participate as keynotes for this, which will either be recorded or live. We're still working out the logistics there. But this really is the first ever international forum on premium cigars, where you're getting people from Europe, Nicaragua, DR, Honduras, Ecuador, Mexico, and convening folks virtually to talk about some of these issues, have leaders provide commentary. And we're also going to have an open forum. There will be a half hour where folks can come together, ask questions, provide commentary. Some of us will be on hand that are professional staff to provide information and feedback, but also just for folks within the industry to discuss some of the most pressing issues, to share best practices. I think that, this is really something to set the stage for future years where we have in-person policy summits, international and domestic. And in that, really like having more of an academic or a more professional approach where you have some white papers, where you have people convene to talk about best practices. I think the PCA magazine is really, and that's an initiative that you spearheaded, Scott. That is really the impetus and driving force behind this. We're trying to professionalize premium cigars, premium cigar policy, and the people that are involved in it, and provide for those vehicles for them to interact beyond the trade show. The trade show is obviously the Super Bowl, but there should be other forums where people can talk about pressing issues and best practices.
Yeah, so look forward. You can get that information on our social media. If you need anything else, it's just going to be available to anybody that would like to join in and participate on that via Zoom. So feel free. Any closing thoughts before we let everybody get back to their Fridays and heading off to Margaritaville?
Just one thing, Scott, and I don't know if you want to mention it a little bit more about the reception on October 6th, too, in addition to the policy summit.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is something that we started last year, went really well. And so we're turning it into an annual fundraiser for the Premium Cigar Association, which is really about rallying around all the components of the cigar industry to raise some funds that go directly towards the advocacy for the premium cigar industry. So this is the second one. We're calling it Cigar Night Live because, in fact, we are live. We're going to be in person, as you said. We're going to be the beautiful rooftop building at the Clarendon Ballroom here in Arlington, Virginia, which is just outside of Washington, D.C. So we're going to have some great food. We're going to have drinks sponsored through Maker's Mark. You're going to get your own hand-dipped glass. And we've had a lot of great manufacturers step up to sponsor this by donating cigars and donating different unique items like ashtrays and humidors and other prizes that you can win through auction. So you're going to get about a dozen cigars, and you're going to have lots of good food and drink. And a lot of manufacturers are going to come in town for this too. So it'll be a great chance to sit back and relax with some of your favorite manufacturers who are providing these cigars for this, as well as some of, obviously the PCA staff will be there, but some of the PCA board members will be on hand as well. So it's going to be a really good time. And everything that goes towards this from the sponsors, and do have to thank our recent sponsor that's coming on to sponsor the food for the event is Smoker Friendly, a great board member of ours and a great member and supporter of ours. All of this money goes directly towards everything we just talked about here, the research, the outreach, all the programs and the services and everything else that we do here in order to advocate for the industry. That's what this all goes towards. So it'll be a great night that's going to come on the heels of this historic policy summit for the first one ever. And so anybody that's in the area or would like to come here, it's easy enough to find on Eventbrite. You just search Cigar Night Live in Arlington, Virginia, and you'll find it. It will be a fantastic night, and we look forward to it. It's going to be a great event, and we'll all go to the best cause, premium cigars.
Well, thanks, guys. We appreciate everyone tuning in on the update. If you have questions or comments or concerns, or if you want us to explain any of the data further, when we release the blog post and some of the information and research Ryan put together, we had a few follow-ups with people that gave us additional ideas and other talking points. So please take a look. Know that PCA, we have a really good feedback loop. So if there are things that you think need to be addressed in this policy, whether you're a retailer, manufacturer, consumer, please reach out to one of us, staff members or consultants, and we'll make sure that we review it and implement it if necessary.
Gentlemen, thank you both. And everybody, thank you for tuning in. And if you're watching this recorded, thank you for watching it recorded. I hope everybody has a fantastic weekend. And as always, guys, thank you very much and take care.